I welcome this debate this evening on the formerly Joint Committee on Communications, Agriculture, Food, Marine and Natural Resources report on the oil and gas exploration in the state. When this debate was scheduled, I had to think back to when the report was actually published, because in fact I'd forgotten about the publishing of the report, much to my own discredit, I suppose. And it is a full year since the publication of this report, and I think that doesn't augur well for the debates that are needed on committee reports in this House. It reminds me of the commitment given 2 weeks ago in the House during a debate on private members' legislation that the upcoming report from the Justice Committee on Prosecution will be scheduled for debate after publication. It didn't say that it would be a year after publication. Aside from the fact that this report was published a year ago, I think it is important that it is debated. And I hope that the debate is intended to inform policy making within the Department of Communications, Energy and Natural Resources, and is simply not a filler of time in the House. The committee of which I was a member when it was a joint committee deliberated for a long time and took evidence from a number of groups in drafting the report. One of the most useful discussions was with Norwegian representatives and experts on the policy decisions made in Norway around their oil and gas reserves. And the one thing that came out of it was that they said that they wouldn't start from where we were coming from. In Norway, they decided the policy at the early stages of their oil industry, a policy that put the good of the Norwegian people at the centre of their decision making. Unfortunately, in this country, the good of the oil and gas industry has been paramount in the development of the sector here. There are three aspects of the report that I want to focus on this evening: the exploration, the taxation debate, and the relationship between the oil and gas industry and the host communities that have the facilities imposed on them. There was a lot of debate in the committee on the taxation and how to get a return for Irish society from any resources that may be developed in the future. The guiding principle of this debate should be that the Irish people have to be seen to get a fair return for allowing energy companies to exploit our resources. As I've seen from the committee deliberations, the exploration industry was very keen to highlight how difficult the Irish exploration landscape is and how hard it is to get a return from exploration. I've discovered that this appears to be the theme that all industry vested interests take in giving evidence to committees, whether it is the oil and gas industry or the retail sector that we are now talking to in the Agriculture Committee in relation to the Code of Practice for the retail trade. The oil and gas industry were very keen to highlight the lack of success from exploration wells offshore in Ireland, constantly going back 40 years and mentioning the number of wells drilled and the low instance of commercial finds, always citing a 1 in 35 success rate. Interestingly, if the figures were analysed in more recent times, from say around the late 1980s, the success rate rises to something like 1 in 12, but that would seem to be more attractive. A key theme in the report is that the technology has improved, and this can be seen from the improved success rate. The industry claim that they are now reduced to looking at old seismic data to try and locate finds. But they forget to mention that looking at old data with modern technology has uncovered commercial finds, as in the case of Norway, where the biggest field ever found has recently been discovered by looking at and re-drilling old data. So as improvements in technology continue and the need to rely on more stable areas politically for exploration grows, the potential for more commercial finds offshore increases. It is therefore timely that the committee's recommendations on taxation should be taken on board and amended by the government. The committee has recommended a minimum 40% tax take made up of corporation tax of 25% and phased profit resource rent tax. The profit resource rent tax should be at a rate of 15%, 35% and 55%, depending on the profitability of the find. So the more profitable the find, the higher the tax take for the Exchequer. And everything we do should be to maximise the return for the Irish people. And I believe that we also should have a guarantee of supply at less than the market rate for the needs of the Irish people. Why should we have to pay the going rate to get the benefit of a resource that belongs to our people? Should we be paying the same as consumers in England or Europe that will benefit from our resources? I don't believe that we should. And there has to be a dividend for the Irish people. And the Minister said that he agreed that there shouldn't be any retrospective changes to the taxation rate. And that's a recommendation that the committee came forward with. But as we look to the future, now is the time to do that review and to change those rates and implement the rates recommended by the committee. Because it'll be too late if we don't have retrospection. When the commercial fines are found, then you'll be arguing that you can't go back and change the rates now, that the companies need certainty. So introduce those new rates at this stage before any further licences are issued and any further fines are made, so that the companies can have that certainty, but so that the Irish people can also have certainty. I also believe that it should be a condition of any licence and commercial fine that it should be refined in the case of oil in Ireland to make sure that we have control of the resource if conditions demand it. Never should it be allowed that an oil find offshore should be allowed to ship crude oil to refineries outside the state. What has been highlighted, and I think everyone at this stage is aware of, is the way that the host community in the case of the Corrib gas find have been treated by the government and by the promoters of the terminal in Rossport. The committee heard very good contributions from Pobal Kilcommon and Pobal Lakela about the impact that the development has had on their communities. I firmly believe that the experience of these communities should not be allowed to be repeated anywhere on this island, and the government can clearly take action to ensure that that does not happen. Both groups recommended that in future developments should not be allowed to be broken up into piecemeal consents. A fragmented consent process should not be allowed to happen at any stage. This is vitally important because a development should not and cannot be allowed to become more important than the proper consultation and community involvement. The splitting of the Corrib consent process has meant that once the site for the terminal was agreed, then the pipeline had to get to it. This has meant that no matter what valid arguments or concerns the community had, they had to be overruled because the gas had to get to the terminal. In future, the state needs to make sure that all aspects of the development process have to happen together and all consents are granted simultaneously. It makes a mockery of the planning process to allow the piecemeal development of any infrastructure. Best practice in Norway has shown that with proper consultation, the best results for communities can be achieved. There also needs to be clear lines of demarcation between the promoter, the regulator, and the health and safety authorities to ensure that each element can do their work completely independently of each other and not be concerned about other aspects of the project. I believe that there will be more commercial fines offshore in Irish waters. The Minister and the State has a responsibility to make sure that they are used not only for the benefit of oil companies, but also for the benefit of the Irish people. Having a tax regime that makes sure that there is a return to the state is vital, but also making sure that there is a supply available to Irish society at a reduced rate, recognising that the Irish people own this resource, should be an integral part of any policy. Finally, ensuring that the planning process reflects the concerns of communities and issues consents for development in an integrated way that respects the needs and concerns of those communities and reflects best practice has to be at the heart of any development